What's up, guys? This is SC Ayala, and welcome back to SC Ayala Talk, where we are taking a journey through my book, Lovesick, Pages of a Poetic Heart. I'm your host, SC Ayala, and again, welcome back. This evening, we're going to be reading off of page 5. It's the very beginning of the book, in case you have it and you want to follow along. If you don't, that's fine too. Again, if you are looking to get the book, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, just about anywhere online. Or you guys can hit me in my DM directly and you can purchase a personal, signed, autographed version of the book. Okay? Other than that, we're going to be on page 5 tonight. Again, it's inside the book. Page 5, 7 Days a Week is the title. And for those of you, just to kind of recap on what we've been listening, what you guys have been listening to, I should say, for this past 3 weeks. This will make, I believe, the 4th week in April. And most of the poems that I've been reading to you have had some kind of backstory that correlates with what my kids were doing during that time. So we're going to finish off this month of April, which is also Autism Awareness Month. Shout out to everybody that's on the spectrum and doing their thing, parents included, everybody that's doing well. Lots of blessings and wishes out to you guys. Again, it is Autism Awareness Month. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this out with one of my kids. I don't even think he understands that this was actually written for him. But again, we'll get to that right after we read. So without further ado, here's 7 days a week. Page 5. 7 days a week. Monday is the first day of my week with you. Tuesday is the second chance I get to be around you. Wednesday is the third day of our week together. Thursday is the fourth day we get to spend time together. Friday is the next day to the last day of our time that we share. Saturday is usually a nice day to spend. Sunday is the last day of our 7 days before we start 7 more lovely days again. 7 days a week. All right, so backstory to this. So my son was probably, and I should say my youngest son was probably about 4 or 5 years old around the time. And he was learning his days of the week and whatnot. And one day after school, he comes home and he's singing the song and he's singing his days of the week and he's snapping his fingers kind of like the Addams Family, and it correlates with the song The Addams Family, and it was really cute. And he got this real serious look after he was done showing me how the song goes, and I was like, wow, that's so great, and I was applauding him and everything, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I didn't realize at the time that he was probably the most entertaining kid that I had ever known thus far, to date. And it doesn't change even 30 years later. He had stopped singing and, asked me, what I like about the 7 days of the week. And I just remember him looking with anticipation of, waiting for me to say the greatest thing, to him, I don't know, making possibly a life-size version of, the space shuttle or something, That's what we as parents, I think that our kids want to hear. Like, oh, the greatest thing to me is, making a space shuttle for you to get in and, go to the moon. That wasn't it. The look he had when I turned around and I told him, I said, well, the best part about any day is spending it with you. Picking you up from school, taking you to school, making dinner for you, just hanging out with you. And I remember the little look on his face was complete and utter shock. And not shock in a bad way, but shock in a good way, like, wow. Like, my mom would really rather hang out with me, she loves me, and I think a lot of times it's the simplicity of parenthood that makes our young ones just love being with us as well. Because truth be told, our little ones don't necessarily have to want to hang out with mom and dad. You know, they've got their own little friends and they might just want to do their own thing. You know, I have a very independent young child who, you know, that's a whole different story. But my youngest daughter, she was very independent. She didn't want to hang out for the most part with anyone but her sibling that was just a year ahead of her. But I'll never forget that day. And when I started to write this, again, it's very short, very sweet, to the point. He was the inspiration behind it, my youngest son, Jared. And I think for a lot of reasons and a lot of different times in our life, and I always say ours because they're there too, you know, we take for granted some of those days of the week. And we get caught up in, you know, sometimes the mundane, you know, schedules, and, you know, you got soccer practice on this day and you got baseball practice on that day and the girls got cheer on this day. And, you know, when you have 5 different schedules going on, you know, it's hard to remember that each one of those days is really a blessing. And I want to say even prior to that, you know, when it was just him and his brother and their younger sister, which is right around this time that I had wrote this, he was really enamored with his mom. You know, I mean, I was a superhero to him. And I had to quickly remind them, well, they're superheroes to me. You know, and I mean, he had the cape and the towels and everything else to prove it, you know. They ran around the house. It was so funny. They used to run around the house and just, you know, put towels around themselves and jump off couches and things. I don't know how many boys did that, but mine sure did, you know. And it didn't stop there. It went right on into the backyard, off the trees and brick walls and anything they could possibly climb and jump off of, you know. But 7 days a week was absolutely the easiest poem I think I had written at that time, because it was so simple just to explain, you know, to my then, you know, 5-year-old, you know, the best part of any day is hanging out with them, you know, hanging out with him, you know. I mean, that guy, I think, really did come out the womb just dancing and entertaining, and, you know, it hasn't stopped. I mean, most of you out there, you know, that are aware of who he is, you know, he goes by the stage name Nishan, and he's, you know, been a performer his whole life. You know, he's been in the entertainment industry forever, you know, and I'll say it, you know, just like I did with anyone else that I've ever known that's been in the industry. You know, it's not an easy industry to be in, but he makes it look easy. You know, it agrees with him. You know, there's a drive that most people don't have, you know, when they just want to do something basic, something normal, you know, let alone be in an industry that's so cutthroat at times, but at the same time is so magical because music definitely moves people. You know, it can heal people. You know, it relates to people in different situations and things that they're going through. And I mean, I remember this kid just, you know, would come home and the first thing he'd want to watch is Will Smith, you know, Men in Black. You know, he wants to hear the song and watch the video and dance around the house with it. And then he'd go into our living room that had these really big mirrors, and, you know, he would just mimic everything that he just saw. And, you know, he'd go get his best dressed suit, you know, for church, and, you know, run around the house like he's MIB, like he's Will Smith. And it was so cute. And as he got older, you know, that's when the Chris Brown, you know, he'd start, you know, mimicking what he saw again, you know, and Michael Jackson. I mean, I could go on for days. He saw so many different artists, and, you know, and he always captured that. And then, you know, for us just being family and whatnot, you know, he was very entertaining to watch. We've got plenty of videos to embarrass him with, I should say. And one day when his child is old enough and, we're all sitting around with nothing to do, I'm pretty sure that'll be a perfect time to bring out those videos and just kind of, share. But he definitely inspired that. And I just remember that this kid at 5 years old was just so in awe with the fact that I had just said simply, you are what makes every single day better. And again, going back to that feeling, the inspiration behind this simple 7 days a week poem is simply that. If you have kids, you have a loved one, you have someone that you just love to be with. For me, that was my kids. It's always been my kids. And now my grandkids, if I had more time, and that's usually the thing. We need more time. We need more time. Sometimes you have to make the time. You have 24 hours in a day. And I'm not saying to show up over at your daughter's house, at 7:30 in the morning, waking everybody up like my dad used to do, and spend the day with us. But I mean, even waking up at 7:30 in the morning because your dad knocks and brought breakfast and he's got McDonald's for everybody, and and the kids get up and he's handing out $5 bills like it's Christmas time, and those things are what I remember. And those things I think my kids will always remember. And no matter what 7 days a week brings outside of them, they'll always be the best part of any day. Surprise visits to Granny now, surprise visits to Nani, or surprise visits from Nani are always met with such a welcoming, loving reception. And I think those are the things that make the most out of any day. 7 days a week. So that's the backstory for that poem. Again, that was 7 days a week, page 5 from the book Lovesick, Pages of a Poetic Heart by SC Ayala. I am your host, and I will see you on the next page. Thanks for tuning in.